Hi, this is Chaplain Tyler, and you're watching this video on You Got This with Tyler. Today I'm going to share with you a bit of my story and something that I've never talked about publicly or almost with anyone. I'm going to share with you what I went through with severe compassion fatigue. And it's very personal. It's hard to talk about, not because I have a lot of shame or guilt, but because it was so painful that it just still grips me to this day. So basically, I had just come through my chaplaincy training. I had gone through the first unit and gone through the entire year-long practicum. I had done so in a prominent trauma hospital and had experienced a lot of things there that started my descent into compassion fatigue. But I wasn't aware of what that was at the time when this occurred. Compassion fatigue was not well known. The effects of trauma were still trying to be understood, and secondary trauma was not seen as a big deal. The culture of chaplains was such that, yes, they wanted us to learn self-care. Yes, there was the idea that if we needed to take a day, we could take a day. So there's a little bit of flex time, but the overall understanding and supports that were needed for somebody who, as a chaplain, I was exposed to the secondary trauma every day, all day. I was never called to anything good. I didn't get to see people get better. I only was called to the difficult, traumatic, brutal cases. And that took its toll. So after a year, I not knowing what was happening to me, I applied for and took a job. Chaplaincy jobs were extremely rare and still are. And I took a job in a different city, working in two different hospitals, both half-time. One was the trauma hospital for the entire region, and the second one was a major community hospital. And I was responsible for about 4,000 people. As a chaplain, that was impossible. There was no way to be able to give the kind of coverage that was needed in order for myself, for the practice that I brought to be effective. Moreover, I came from a situation where I was responsible for about 110 people. Yes, one ICU and one trauma unit, and then two other units, plus on call on a consistent basis. But going from 110 patients to plus all their families and staff, and that was manageable, to approximately 20 units, including two emergency departments, two ICUs, a CCU, the city burn unit, psychiatry, the renal unit, which at the time was also a palliative unit, and organ donation, forensic psychiatry, short stay medicine, all of that city's outpatient renal dialysis program. My chaplaincy style was one where I was used to building relationships with people and caring for them and working with them. But in this new context, that was impossible. But I still tried. I wasn't given flex time. I wasn't given any kind of stress leaves. I wasn't given hardly any sick time at the time. That just wasn't part of the package, compensation package. And the traumas and the secondary traumatic stress just kept building and building and building. And it took a toll that I did not understand. The symptoms started about 4 or 5 months into the new job, where I started getting regular headaches. I started feeling a little bit nauseous. I started having a little bit of muscle weakness. It was becoming more and more difficult for me to concentrate on working with people. My ability to care for people, which has always been a strength of mine, and I care greatly about people, started to become dulled. My emotions overall became more dulled, and there just wasn't anything that I could do to get on top of things. My sleep patterns became more and more erratic, and anxiety started to build, and that was the start of it. Because there was no respite, and because there was no real supports, things kept getting worse. One of the things that I have wondered as I've researched compassion fatigue is what happens if somebody has compassion fatigue for so long that without any respite, what occurs in them? What are the symptoms? Well, I can tell you what mine were. You may have different ones if you have been exposed to secondary traumatic stress for a long period of time. For me, I started to have much more extreme physical symptoms. I started to have visual problems in terms of perception. I would walk into walls. I would catch edges of pillars and corners hard. The muscle weakness got much worse. I would suddenly fall out of nowhere, just walking. Just suddenly I'm down. It made no sense. I started having heart issues, blood pressure issues. I started, as things got worse, I gained a lot of weight. And I started having, I gained ulcers, and I started bleeding, having blood in my stool. My ability to concentrate was non-existent. I couldn't remember somebody's name to save my life. I couldn't remember a family member's name or where I knew them from or anything. It was like I was walking more and more in a daze, with no ability to be present. I started having situations where I would walk into the hospital in the morning and my throat would swell shut. And it would become very, very difficult to talk. I still feel it to this day. I can go back, and this is now over 20 years ago, and it's still fresh in my mind. That that pain and that experience, it doesn't leave. And I can still feel it. I can still go back in my mind. It's right there. Sleep became torturous. There was no rest. There was constant problems in terms of having disturbed sleep and nightmares and things. There were my ability to stay away from bad or addictive behaviors was gone. I had no ability to stay true to who I was. It just wasn't possible. And while I never did anything illegal, I certainly understand when people who have gone through and are experiencing compassion fatigue for a prolonged period of time, when they fall into behaviors that they never thought they would ever do in their entire life. I get it. Holy crap, I get it. The migraines got worse. All the symptoms that I listed originally, they just got worse and worse, and then all the other ones were added. The problems that came with compassion fatigue, it wasn't just the compassion fatigue that was the problem. It became the doorway for so many other conditions. Like, my anxiety went through the roof. I had no ability to know that things were going to be okay. They weren't. And I dreaded going to the hospitals every day. It was just horrendous. I dreaded it. Had to. But it was unbelievable. Panic attacks started happening. Depression entered in and became quite prevalent. And I think that's the thing that people miss with compassion fatigue, is that with compassion fatigue, it's the other conditions that come with it that make it so devastating. I was absolutely incapable of sustaining any kind of relationship at that particular time. It was impossible. There was no way that I was functional in any way. It just didn't happen. And while I'm relatively okay being on my own, and I'm very much a loner in a lot of ways. But at that time, I isolated from everything and anyone and everyone. I withdrew. There was no way that I couldn't give anything to anybody. And boy, I resented anyone that wanted anything from me. Even somebody who said hello. It was like they demanded a response from me and I couldn't give it. It was unbelievable. I was somebody that didn't shut my heart. Although I really get it. Shutting your heart down is a survival mechanism. And a lot of professional caregivers I know have had to shut their heart down because they have to. They go about in this, like I said, in a daze, numbed, sarcastic, cynical, whereas before they were caring, loving, and they knew they were making a difference with people. There was no way for that understanding or feeling to be there. There just wasn't. It wasn't there. So I had to make a decision. Because there was nothing in sight that was going to be helpful for me in terms of support, because I recognized that I was on the road to a premature death, and at the time the system supports were not there. The understanding of what I was going through wasn't there. The decision I made at that time was to leave that position, even though I did not expect to ever find another chaplaincy job again, although I did. And many people are being faced with that decision right now. Do they go through and keep going with what they're experiencing, although it may kill them, and it may ruin their relationships, it may ruin their family, it may ruin everything that they hold dear? They don't see another way out. And I think that compassion fatigue is one of the main reasons that so many nurses, especially in North America, so many nurses are looking for alternatives. They're looking for ways that they can find relief outside of the nursing profession, because the nursing profession, as wonderful as it is, and as absolutely amazing as the nurses are, the amount of trauma that they are experiencing is so high. And the systems that are needed to really help are not in place. This is one of the reasons that I created a course for compassion fatigue recovery, because I didn't find any support anywhere. And as I've continued to research and look for things, what I find are talk therapy or the occasional benefits package that will give some counseling. But that's not enough. That is not going to cut it. And I can only hope and dream that in the work that I have done to create this course, that there will be some people who can benefit from it and go back to being the caring, loving person that they are. Anyways, that's a little of my journey. It's one of the more painful ones that I went through as a chaplain. It affected every area of my life, including faith, including my identity, including what I thought of people. Every area was affected. And it's my hope that I can help those with compassion fatigue to find themselves again. Thank you for letting me vent. I have never really talked about this with anybody before. This is Chaplain Tyler. You've been watching this video and You Got This with Tyler. And I look forward to sharing with you again. Blessings.